Hello and welcome to the April coffee subscription tasting video where I'm going to taste the coffees that we're sending out to all our coffee subscribers in April 2021. Now for those of you who don't know what a coffee subscription is, it means you sign up to a subscription and we send you our favorite coffees on the first Wednesday of every month. And I'm the one who actually chooses the coffees based on what I think is the best at any given time. So for instance, this month we're sending out 3 coffees from one farm in Honduras that I think are tasting fabulous at the moment. So if you want to subscribe to our coffees, you can go to our website, which there's a link below, and sign up for a recurring subscription. You can pause it at any time, you can change it at any time, and you can stop it at any time. So there's no binding times here. Cool, let's get on with the tasting. And today we're going to do a very fun exercise that all of you can do at home if you have 1 or 2 or 3 of our coffees in your mailbox. Now we normally send 1 coffee to a 1 bag subscriber, of course, and then 2 coffees to 2 bag subscribers and 3 different coffees to our 3 bag subscribers. But if you subscribe to 4, 5 or 6 bags, we will send 2 of the first coffee or 2 of the second coffee and 2 of the third coffee, depending on how many bags you're subscribing to. And sometimes we'll even add a couple of extra coffees in there because we have limited amounts or something like that. So today I've promised you a fun exercise, and that involves some instant coffee. And I'm sure you know how to get a glass of instant coffee. It's something that's sold all around the world, and why we're going to taste instant coffee today is to use it as kind of a reference when we're tasting the other coffees. It's so much easier to describe flavor when you have a sort of a reference. So I actually prefer having a type of reference like this. I don't always use instant coffee myself, but I have this kind of standard coffee that I can always go back to and use as a reference when I'm tasting coffee, just to kind of calibrate my own flavor descriptors and so on. Now, it doesn't really matter what quality the instant coffee is. It doesn't have to be instant coffee. It can be a really cheap supermarket coffee, whatever makes you happy, as long as it's low quality and very different from the other coffees here. So this I know has a part of Robusta in it. That also doesn't matter, because the point of this exercise is to really taste the difference in the coffee. And the fun part is that you don't have to use boiling hot water. You can use it at the kind of tasting temperature, which for me is around maybe 50 degrees. So you can instantly taste the coffee and compare it to the other coffees. Oh, yes, that tasted really bad. Tastes like popcorn, or you know, the Kellogg's cereal called Smacks Honeycorn. That's kind of how this coffee tastes like. It just tells me that there's a lot of Robusta in this coffee. Also, instant coffee is kind of a cool thing to use because it's quite constant in the flavor profile, so it doesn't change a lot over time. Now, on to the first coffee that we're sending out this month, which is from the farm Nacimiento in Honduras. A farm that we have been working with for a long time. It's actually the first farm we started buying directly from. And the farmer, Jobneel is a very nice man. He's quite a young farmer. He's probably my age, so notice I said young here, in his 40s, and has been doing coffee farming for maybe 15 years. We started buying coffee from him in 2009, or actually 2008, through the Cup of Excellence coffee auction. And then we went to visit him in 2009 and bought our first lots in 2010. I think that's the dates. Now this first coffee is one of the best coffees he's growing, actually. At the Nacimiento farm, it's a farm that's situated on a mountain range, so it's kind of on a hillside. So the bottom of the farm is at 1,500 meters above sea level, and the top of the farm is 1,800 meters above sea level. That means he's growing coffee in all these kind of areas. And the first pickings are normally at the lower part of the farms, and the later pickings are at the higher part of the farms. So that means the later the pickings, normally the better the quality as well. And there is actually a marginal difference here, because you can actually taste that the later harvests are a little bit more intense than the coffees coming from the lower part of the farm. Now, I said this is one of the best coffees he grows. Oh, and it is a fantastic coffee. It's a Bourbon from his farm, and his Bourbon variety is one of my favorite varieties at his farm. It's always really fruity. really intense, has this kind of winey fruitiness like red berries. It's juicy, very sweet, slightly floral. You can get these kind of rose petals, black currant sometimes. Yeah, just a mix of red berries. If you just go straight into tasting this coffee, some people it might be a little hard to pick these flavors out, but if you take a little spoonful of that instant coffee, which is very roasty, it kind of neutralizes your mouth. Not really, but it gives you this kind of very bitter coffee flavor in the mouth. And then if you go back to the Nacimiento Bourbon, wow, you notice a lot of sweetness, a lot of acidity, a lot of fruit flavor. Fantastic coffee. So the first coffee we're sending out, Bourbon variety from Nacimiento. It's one of the best coffees, I think, from this farm. And this is actually a mix of different harvests because we separate the lots by harvest time and also variety. But there was not a lot of this Bourbon last year because Jobneel doesn't have a lot of these trees, and he had also cut them down to kind of renew them, because when you cut them down they will grow back up and produce more coffee. So that's quite normal to do after 5, 6, 7 years, and he just did that 2 years ago, so there's not a lot of these trees in production. Wow. Now the second coffee we're going to taste and send out is Pacas variety from the same farm. Now, Pacas is a mutation of Bourbon, so that means it's actually very closely related, but genetically something happened, and this particular variety was discovered in El Salvador by the Pacas family, and it's a short tree that produces quite a lot of coffee and has very good quality. And when we started buying coffee from Nacimiento, we started separating the coffees by variety, and Jobneel was producing Catuai, Bourbon and Pacas, and we quickly recognized that Bourbon and Pacas were the best ones. Bourbon being a little bit bigger tree, a little bit more fragile, I would say, more susceptible to disease than the Pacas, so Jobneel decided to plant more of the Pacas. So this is kind of the standard coffee from the farm, but it doesn't mean that it's a bad coffee, because it's quite delicious. And this is from a later picking, so higher up on the farm. Very fruity, intense, maybe slightly more herbal than the Bourbon, which is very winey, and Pacas is really nice, fruity, some herbs, very sweet. Let's taste it next to the instant coffee. Oh, which is very roasty and just becomes worse when it cools down. But coming back to the Pacas, it's so delicious. It's very sweet, fruity, very well balanced, just a very harmonious coffee. This is the beauty of comparing to like some cheap supermarket coffee, that when you have very high quality coffee next to it, you can clearly taste the difference. It's easier to pick out the kind of fruit flavors and so on. Let's move to the third coffee, which is quite exciting because it's also from Finca Nacimiento, but it's a SL28 variety or Kenyan variety. We managed to get some Kenyan seeds, they call it in Central America, to Jobneel maybe 8 years ago now, and we planted them with him on top of the farm. And these trees have been growing really slow because it's very cold there, but they're finally giving some yields. And we have been having this coffee for a few years now, but I think this year is the best year so far. Let's taste it. Wow. So intense. Very kind of fruity and floral at the same time, but in a more like a red berry, black currant, rose hip kind of way, with some rose flavors. It's not the kind of typical Ethiopian florals where you have more like jasmine and lemon. This is more like red berries and this kind of violet. You can use a spoon to taste this one. Let's taste it after the instant. Oh, that just tastes like roasted corn. Oh man. Wow. Yeah. Super fruity, very intense. High acidity, but it has a lot of sweetness and a lot of intensity in flavor. So it really kind of suits this coffee well. SL28 or Kenyan varieties, normally grown in Kenya. But when you bring the coffee to other parts of the world, it doesn't taste necessarily exactly the same. But this variety has a lot of fruit flavor normally. When it's planted in good altitudes, you normally get this really red berry, blackcurrant-like flavors. And this is no exception. I think out of the 3 coffees, this is probably the most intense this year. Wow, but they're all really good. Bourbon being a little bit softer. The Pacas being a little bit more tart and herbal. And the SL28. Very winey, tart, floral, very intense. Now, those are the 3 coffees we're sending out to all our coffee subscribers this month. And if you want to subscribe to our coffees, go to our website. There's a link below. Also remember to subscribe to the videos, because we're making a video like this every month when we're sending out new coffees. So you can taste the coffees and get some kind of notes on the side and see if you taste the same. And I highly recommend trying to get a reference. It doesn't really matter what it is, as long as you have something to compare it with. So if you're only subscribing to 1 bag of coffee, it makes it a lot easier to taste the coffee. It can also be high quality coffee, don't get me wrong here. But if you wanted to buy a high quality coffee and compare it to these coffees, I would try to get something that's very contrasting. So maybe a Brazilian coffee, maybe an Indian coffee, something like that. It's much easier to pick out the differences when you have very different coffees on the table. But the reason why I'm recommending you to have a kind of cheaper supermarket coffee is normally they're quite dark roasted, and normally the coffees don't have a lot of expressive flavors. So normally they have like nutty flavors, more chocolatey flavors, more kind of rough, robust corn flavors if it's Robusta. And it makes a really nice contrast to these higher acidity, fruity coffees that we're sending out this month. Cool, I hope you really enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for the next month's video as well. We're gonna send out some nice coffees next month too. So thanks for watching, I hope to see you soon.